Need a break at all at this time? Okay, I don't. Okay. Good. I'd like to call this regular meeting of the Northfield Township Board to order. Please stand for the invocation and the pledge.
Dear God, with the blessing of this day and this new year, may we, with renewed vigor and resolve, humbly petition your guidance, compassion, love, and wisdom to grace our lives and hearts. Amen.
Amen. Please call the roll, Clerk Manley.
Bellinger.
Here.
Dockett. Here. Zelenak.
Here.
Shockley.
Here.
Manley here. Check. Here. And Otto is absent with notice.
Okay, so we have a quorum, and you have the agenda ahead of you. Can I have a motion to adopt the balance of the agenda as presented?
Support.
We'll make Ms. Bellinger the motion maker, and
I'll support.
And Ms. Chick will support that. Thank you. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, thank you. We now have another opportunity for call to the public. If anyone would like to speak at this time, feel free to come up, state your name, your address, and you have about 3 minutes to share with us your thoughts. Do you have anyone at this time who would like to speak? Okay, seeing no one, we will move on. Well, we have no board member response because we have no comments. But we'll have board member comment. Go ahead, Ms. Zelnok, we'll start with you.
So I'd just like to remind people that on February 8th, the second Thursday of the month, the Land Preservation Committee is going to have a meeting. We meet on that time all the time the second Thursday, but we're going to invite land experts to come and talk about the benefits of land preservation. So I'd like to extend an invitation, as always, to the public, but especially for that meeting. Thank you.
What time and where?
It's at 7 p.m. It's on February 8th. It will be here in this room.
Okay, great. Ms. Bellinger.
I do think we probably would be a very good idea for us to look into the fees for some of the building department fees, because it was even mentioned to myself by our previous controller that we were accumulating a bit of funding, too much funds in that particular department, and we maybe need to look into adjusting our fees so that we don't end up accruing additional balance.
Okay. Any other board member comments at this time? Okay. I agree with you, Ms. Bellinger, and we need to look at our fee schedule too. So that'll be on an upcoming agenda. Next item, correspondence and announcements. In your packet, we have printed the Board of Review announcement. So the assessing department will be sending out the 2018 notice of assessments by February 26th to property owners in the township. So if you have questions regarding your 2018 assessment or would like to make an appointment to meet with the Board of Review, you can call the assessing department after February 26th at the township's phone number, which is 734-449-2880. And after that, the Northfield Township Board of Review will be meeting in the municipal offices located, this is the municipal offices, 8350, and they'll be meeting March 13th from 9 until 5 p.m. and March 15th from 1 until 9 p.m. And the purpose of that meeting is to review the assessment rolls of Northfield Township. So any matters pertaining to the assessment of property may be brought before the Board of Review at that meeting. So it would be important to make an appointment, and those will be taken until 4:30 p.m. on Thursday, March 15th, 2018. You can also send a letter appeal to the township, and they'll be accepted if they're received by Thursday, March 15th at 4:30 p.m. That's my notice. The other items under correspondence, which I'd like to draw your attention to, is the North Village RFP, and that has been put out. Mr. Ains can speak to whether there's been any response yet, but go ahead, Mr. Ains.
We're still disseminating it to as many places as we can, but I have had 2 responses so far. And as you see on the schedule, there's a date scheduled for a pre-construction meeting and for people to bring their comments, questions, so forth. But anybody can call or email me with questions or comments at any time. We'll pursue those. What we'd like to do is compile any of those questions that seem to be pertinent and give written answers and send them out to anybody that's responded, and also posted on the website and other places where we posted this.
Okay. Great. Do you have a question, Ms. Zelnick? Go ahead.
I do. I have a
Go
few.
ahead.
I don't know how we shall proceed. I mean, can we open up this for discussion? Do we need a motion for that, for discussion?
I think it's appropriate to just ask quick questions to Mr.
So
Haynes.
one is, I actually have 3 questions. You mentioned about communicating it to the people. What communication methods? I know it's on our website, but how are we reaching out to people to let them know about this?
And pardon me, the developer, or not developer, the consultant has given us a number of websites that we've sent this to that people look for construction projects. In addition to this, we've put notices in the newspaper and the Detroit paper, as well as the Ann Arbor one. We're trying to put out news releases to various publications. We've got it on our website. We're sending it out to a variety of organizations that we think might be of interest, announcing it at our board meetings and other meetings. So if you have any further suggestions, anywhere you can think we might have missed, we would like to know those too. But we are trying to disseminate it everywhere we can think might draw interest.
Okay. Do you have another one,
I
Ms.
do.
Zelnick?
So you mentioned it's on the website. So I did find it. Is it possible to put it on the front page of the website? I didn't notice it that way, so I might have missed it, but if not, is it possible so we don't have to chain into it? I mean, it goes down, I think, about 3 or 4. So you'd have to, I'd like to make it easier to find, and I was thinking if it was on the front page or a tab up at the top of the front page where you could just go North Village RFP.
Okay, I'll discuss with Jennifer and either make the change or check with our website advisors as to how to do that.
Okay.
I just have one more.
Go ahead.
It says the steering committee evaluation period. What will be the process to select, and who is the steering committee?
I believe the intent of this was that it left it open to the board, the planning commission, the DDA, the downtown study group, etc. It was intended to be a review by all those parties that have been involved of the proposals and receive input on them.
Okay. Ms. Chick?
So shouldn't there be an actual steering committee established with members as opposed to all these groups getting involved?
That would be up to your discretion.
Okay. And the other thing, I know some people don't find Facebook a credible source for information, but could we put a link onto Facebook? At least the public would like to know what's going on. There's a lot of discussion all the time about what's the township doing in regard to development, and if we could put something there that they could at least see, you can go here and look to see what we're doing.
Okay, I'll discuss that with Jennifer tomorrow also.
We have a township
Yep.
webpage. It could be posted there on Facebook. We do have a township Facebook page.
I'm just talking, we have like 4 in the township that people can go to. We should probably do all of them,
I'm
because
saying
not everybody
the town-
goes to the township site.
I'm saying we have one for the town.
I
think
know
Fran-
that.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's possible it's already there, but when Ms. Carlisle puts out the e-news every week, and she announces things to the public, she does put it up on all of the different sites, the Whitmore Lake News, the Northfield Area News. I can't think of the name of them all. There's so many of them, but she posts to all of those. Another thing that we can do personally is if we have LinkedIn, if we're on LinkedIn or I'm sure there's other sites, but we can share it on our LinkedIn site. So I need to go improve my LinkedIn and actually share it too. It's been distributed to developers that Mr. Lippens knows too. There's a whole list of names, so I believe he's put it out to population that he knows. So, you know, we'll get it out there as best we can. I think Ms. Carlisle has even called the state to get it onto their site and has gotten it onto the state's website. So,
Right, and because she's doing such an extensive job of it, that's why she's still in the process. But she's been working for about a week now to get it out.
It's a lot of work, yeah. So any more questions on this? Mr. Dockett?
I would like to ask, somewhere in the paperwork, I got a call today about REP. Nowhere does it say what it is. You know, the people on the board know, but it seems like somewhere in the literature or on the web or someplace, you'd have,
Oh,
Okay.
what?
you know, what the hell we're talking about. I mean,
Okay.
Yeah.
we know, and the people on the board
Yep.
know.
Yeah.
People out in the audience don't get it.
You're right. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, any
Just
more?
just to make sure the audience on TV know, it's request for proposals, RFP.
RFP, right. Okay,
But we'll try to make it clear.
okay. Yeah, the next item the next item was about the billing. Did anyone have any questions about that? There's plenty of information in the packet about it. Ms. Bellinger?
Was it indeed verified that this person did indeed pay all these late fees? Really? So all these late fees and so forth? Okay.
Right.
Yeah, the deputy clerk does the sewer billing, and she went back through all these records, verified them.
I have one more question.
Okay, Mr. Dockett.
Why did you mention in your information that you sent out that the check was okayed to $5,000? All that did was confuse me anyway. And I'm wondering,
Yeah.
is that going to be done if a bill's for $10, or are you going to okay a check to $5,000, or?
I have been told, and I'm still in the learning stage, that the board likes to know when there are substantial amounts of money being spent, even though I have authority to spend up to $5,000. The intent of the notice was to say that by board prior action, I have authority up to $5,000, but the amount of money was also presented here as being $2,469.33. So as long as the board wants...
How much?
In the memo in the packet, it says the amount of the account refund would be $2,469.33.
Yeah, I understand that. So if the check would have been for $2,500, up to $2,500, I'd understand. But when it's more than double what the bill was, it was confusing to me.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any more? Another question, Ms.
Yeah,
Bellinger?
on this, I tried my best. I understood that what was intended was two things. First, I've been allocated by the board to write a check up to $5,000. But somehow that got confused to meaning that even though the amount owed was only $24,609.33, that somehow Mr. Dockett, I believe, thought that it was a check up to that. So in other words, it was an open check up to $5,000. It was a little confusing, or he was trying to explain it to me, and I was attempting to illustrate that the permission was that we authorized up to $5,000, but indeed this was only written for $2,469.
Okay.
I understand. I didn't question the fact that he is able to do that. I'm not questioning that.
Okay.
Okay, I'm
Thank you.
sorry if there was any confusion. I apologize. The reason you set an amount normally is in an emergency, I would do it without talking to you at all, but I would inform you after the fact. So that's what I try to do, is keep the board informed.
Okay. Ms. Zelnok, go ahead.
I would like to thank our deputy clerk, Miss Christina Wilson, for resolving this and working through it, because it's based on the note, it's been going on since 2014. So I appreciate the staff getting this completed, and should be a happy individual. Thank you.
Yep. We're trying to clean these things up as we find them as quickly as possible. So this was great that staff got on that. All right, next item on our agenda is the Public Safety Building second floor lease. And I will leave this item to Mr. Ains and Mr. Maines to discuss with us.
Basically, the board had authorized the attorneys and I to negotiate an agreement and to bring back the agreement to you. We've talked at the last meeting about some of the major factors. The attorneys have prepared the lease. It's been distributed to both parties. You had it in your packet today. I'll defer to Mr. Maines to update you and give you the type of language that I would recommend you do tonight.
Okay, go ahead, Mr. Maines.
So our office, can you hear me okay, by the way, Mr. Dockett? I know we were having problems. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
No problem. Our office received preliminary comments from LawNet, I believe towards the end of the day yesterday, so we saw them for the first time this morning. They have not had an opportunity to complete their attorney review of the lease, nor has the lease gone before their board as yet. The preliminary comments that we received were primarily sort of drafting in nature of, is this language appropriate? How is this going to work? They had, for instance, a question of, is their access to the building going to be through the front door, or is it going to be through the back door where they're parking? It's not spelled out in the lease, but certainly that's something that we could resolve. There didn't appear to be any substantial questions, and what I mean by that is there didn't seem to be any objections about the price, there didn't seem to be any objections about the term, there didn't seem to be any objections about utilities and reimbursement and things of that nature, which we sort of thought were hammered out previously. So that's all to the good. It's entirely possible that when this goes through their board, those questions may arise, but at least on behalf of their representatives, those don't seem to be issues. What we would be looking for tonight is, first of all, any questions that anybody has on the lease as drafted. I'd certainly be happy to answer any of those. If there is not, we would request authorization to complete negotiation of the lease, and if there are no substantial changes to the lease, to authorize the township manager to execute the lease once it's approved by LawNet.
Okay. Ms. Chick.
So I'm assuming there's going to be some changes after there's negotiations to the contract, I would assume.
I would expect so.
And we'll see that before we finalize anything?
That's up to you.
Okay.
So what I expect is that the changes that we're going to be asked to make are not going to be anything substantial.
Okay.
That they're going to be fairly minor in nature, or language tweaks or things of that nature. It's always our recommendation to bring these things back to the board to get one final look at the draft. If the board's comfortable with sort of authorizing Mr. Ains, unless there's any substantial questions,
Okay.
that's fine. But it's usually our recommendation to bring it back in a final form, because I don't want to guess wrong about whether something's a substantial change or not. I'd rather give you the chance to see it one more time.
Thank you.
So,
If I could also clarify, for instance, the question of entry into the building was made clear all the way along. The lieutenant and I had agreed. They come through the back door, they park in the back parking lot. They don't come through the front door, they don't use the front parking lot. But apparently their attorney must have thought that needed to be defined
That's fine.
somewhere. So those are things that we don't think are substantial, because we've already discussed what our requirements are from an administrative standpoint. And so unless it was something very major, we would go ahead and proceed with it if you authorize it tonight.
Okay. Mr. Dockett.
I have a couple of things. top of the page, we talk about the air conditioner, about the all expenses for the electrical, telephone, cable, utilities will be paid by the tenant. And it's going to be separately metered, meaning, I guess, the electrical. Because I don't see any other problem with that. And it says they're going to pay for one REU, but the taxpayers are not going to get any break on that because they're subtracting it off what the township pays. So we got, according to the paperwork that you sent me today, we got 13 people working in the township, in the office, and we're going to add 20 people, and they're not going to pay a penny more for sewers. I don't think that's fair to the taxpayers, and I want to say there's 7 people on this board, and only 3 people on this board pay any sewer bills. So all the rest of the people you see here tonight, except me and one other, they don't pay any sewers. So I'm concerned about that. And another thing on page 6, bottom of the page, it says that it's going to be anything over $500, the taxpayers are going to pay to repair. And it says including electricity. Well, if they're going to pay for their electricity on their own meter, I don't believe that it should say in here that we're going to pay for the electricity. And they not mention anything about air conditioning. Now, air conditioning is almost all electric. So if they're going to get air conditioning, and that means the taxpayers are going to pay for 100% of their air conditioning. So those are a couple of things that doesn't look like it's fair to the taxpayer, to me, as far as I'm concerned. Thank you.
Any more?
Maybe somebody can explain it to me, but I don't know why they say they're responsible for the electric on the one place, but the townships has to pay anything over $500.
Well,
A commercial building, you call for a repair, it's $200
repairs.
when they pull in the driveway.
yeah. Mr. Dockett, it says the landlord shall be responsible for repairs in excess of $500. This is if our systems break down here, we're going to be repairing them anyway. It's not that we're requiring them, that's not part of their bill.
I'm sorry,
I don't see
Madam
where they're paying
Supervisor.
for any air.
Mr. Maines, go ahead.
If I may, the key phrase there also is really just after where you stopped reading, which is
Yeah.
that would constitute a capital
Capital
improvement to
improvement.
the system. So this would be a substantial, for instance, if the township was going to have the entire building rewired.
If it's their electric that they put in, are we paying for that?
No, that's theirs.
Well, this is confusing to me, where it says one place where they pay, the other place where the township pays for electric.
It's a capital improvement, which is different than an electric bill. Okay,
What do you think we should pay for the air conditioning? 100% of the air conditioning for them? They're not going to pay any electric bill to us.
That is the electric
And when you
bill.
turn on the air conditioner,
They're
it's
gonna-
all electric.
they're going to that's part of their electric bill. Yeah,
Where does it say that the electric bill is prorated?
it's a utility. All right.
No.
If I
page 4.
could speak
Go
to
ahead.
the issue, the leasee has indicated that they will install electric meter, and they'll meter all electric that they are using in their operation.
But
The
not
other-
there.
Well, electricity goes to the air conditioning system.
Yeah, there's no gas, there's nothing else goes to it except electric.
Right, anything like the gas We have a provision that they pay based on the percentage of the square footage of the building, which is about 9%.
I understand that. And I agree with that. But I don't agree that we're paying 100% of their air.
Okay.
Any more questions? Ms. Bell,
100% of their sewer.
Ms. Bellinger?
So, that is a point. I don't see how they're gonna have their air conditioning on a separate electric circuit. So that is a point, unless we are charging additional 9% of our electric bill for them. I think that may be what Mr. Dockett's referring to. That's a good point.
I want this deal, but I don't want the taxpayers to have to subsidize another police department here.
Can you confirm that it's going to be prorated for the air conditioning?
I think that
in the
we
whole
need to
building?
discuss them with
Okay.
that. Pardon me. I think that we need to discuss that with them. I think that's an absolutely fair point. I mean, while you can certainly separately meter a light socket,
Yep.
the air conditioner doesn't work that way. That's a fair point.
That's right. Okay.
That's the same with heat, evidently.
And heat is, they're getting 9% of the heat bill. So I think we would propose the same thing for air conditioning, that we would go 9%.
For the overall electric bill, okay.
I don't know whether they'll agree to that, but we can certainly propose it.
I think it's reasonable. That would be nice.
Okay. All right.
Do we need to vote
Ms.
on including that into the lease, asking for that? Or is it just making that note and you'll go forward with that?
I think, given that that's a concern of the board, I think that we should probably bring this back no matter what. So we'll discuss it further with them with that direction from the board, and we'll bring it back.
Okay. Because otherwise, couldn't we say it's pro rata share of heating and cooling bills? Or is that not a?
I think we're going to have to look into the electrical a little bit more, because I don't know that we can easily disaggregate the air conditioning electrical from the rest of the electrical.
Cooling is 100% electricity.
Right, which I think just gets blended in with the rest of the electrical bill for the building, unlike heating, which is heating's heating.
We need to.
Okay.
So,
We'll let you figure that out.
Thank you.
Okay.
Kathy has a comment.
Go ahead.
Can they put the AC on a separate meter, maybe?
the issue is I think probably you could put it on a separate meter, but you're not going to be able to distinguish between how much of that is ours and how much of it is theirs.
Right, but then just do the 9% of that separate meter.
You could do that.
Right.
Yeah.
So what if they like it like 68 degrees up here and they want it 70 degrees downstairs? How do you, I know, it's never going to work.
Well, if we're reasonable,
Ms. Zelnok, you had a question. All right.
Yes, so if we go to page 2, in number 3, we're talking about April 1st by the cost of living escalator source. So did we agree on the consumer price index?
That's what they proposed in their response to us, is
Okay.
the CPI. So I
Okay.
think that the CPI is where we are.
And I don't recall, and I did not go back and look at our meeting, did we agree to do an up to maximum of 3%? I know there was discussion, and I recall it kind of going back and forth.
per year, wasn't it?
It says each year, but I don't even recall that that was
No,
our
it's
final
not in the
decision.
second- it was
Mr.
After the second year.
Right,
Okay.
right. But what, did we agree to have a maximum up to 3% per year?
And
I don't
Madam
recall
Treasurer,
that.
If I may, I put that in solely for discussion purposes because there was discussion of
Right.
that, but I wasn't sure if there was a consensus, so I put that in for the
Right.
board to discuss.
Actually, like I said, I didn't go back and look at the meeting. I'm not sure. Did we agree to that? Is that how we want to leave the contract?
I'm fine with that. Okay.
So we have 3 fines.
3 fines.
How we on this side? Up to 3% per year? Are we fine on this side?
Yeah.
Okay,
I thought that's what we said.
okay.
Okay.
I wasn't sure. And then in the term on page 1, is there discussion on when it's really starting? I know they want to be in here by April 1st. How's that working? Does that still look like when it's going to happen?
they had proposed May 1st in the response that I got today, and that it would still be 5 years. It would just be May 1st to April 30th. I think that the concern is that I think that their original construction schedule was maybe a little bit hopeful, and they want to make sure that they're going to be able to take occupancy on the date in question. I know that Mr. Burns had some conversation with the lieutenant, and they had hoped to have a little bit softer start date of, well, when it's able to be occupied, et cetera, and we said, no, there's got to be a date certain that you're going to be in by, that the township's going to start getting rent. So I think that May 1st is going to be their proposal.
Okay.
I have one more.
I'm gonna look at this, but I thought I read in here where it said the day we signed the contract. I'm pretty
No.
sure. I think it's in here.
So there's a clause in there that says that they can start construction on the date that the contract's executed,
Maybe it was that.
because that was what they had wanted. They didn't want it to start running until they could actually occupy.
Okay.
I have one more question.
All right, Ms. Zelnick.
Page 4, again, going back to the RUEs. So currently, how many RUEs are we? RUEs. Are we currently paying for this building? 17. So with them or without this new occupants, we're still going to be paying for 17, but they are now going to be paying for one of them. Is that correct?
They're subtracting one off the township
Right.
and putting it
So
on.
my question too is, should we not have the sewer people even evaluate to see if we are truly using 17? I find it not possible that we're
We
using
can't
17.
possibly be
Yeah, they
using
talked about
17.
metering it at one point, but it was be really expensive.
Okay, but they can't come and assess it. I mean, as Mr. Doggett said, we have like 13 people in staff. I mean, do we really think we're using 17
think so.
RUs?
By the square foot.
Mr. Ains has
Okay.
some
Well,
input.
it's my understanding, and this is before I ever came, and Mr. Dockett knows more about it, but my understanding was that the township was getting charged for a very small number of REUs, and Mr. Dockett objected to it and came through with them and looked at all the facility, and that's how the number of REUs got increased to what it is now. Now, as far as what they would be using, there's only one piece of plumbing they're installing, which is a small sink in their kitchenette area. So the question would be, using our restrooms, are they contributing substantially to the flow to the wastewater treatment plant? But
It doesn't make sense that they're bringing in 20 people and they're not using any more sewer.
Okay.
It does not make sense.
Okay.
It doesn't pass the smell test.
Miss Bellinger.
I really would like to consider possibly, 2 or 3 RUs to charge them for using is it a lot? I mean, I don't know, maybe you would know better. I don't know, but it just seemed like one was a little bit weak regarding they'll be using the facilities.
Okay. 1 RU is 260 gallons a day. How many times do you think they're going to flush that toilet?
I guess that would take a lot,
I
wouldn't
mean,
it?
seriously, I think we're...
And this building really ought to be metered. We have several other
Yes.
customers that are metered because they don't use very much. They have a larger plant, but they don't use very much. So we could be metered, and apparently we do have some sort of a meter at the wastewater treatment plant that we could probably install. That's
The
cheap.
law says it goes by the square footage. There's 10,000 there's 50,000 square feet in this building.
Okay.
And the formula calls for 17.
Okay. Mr. Ains, did you have
Need
a
to look at
comment
that
on
law.
the meter?
I did ask Dan to get a quote for having a meter installed, and I do have that quote. I don't have it here, it's downstairs. But it appeared to me that it would be more expensive to install a meter than it would be to simply establish a number and let it go based on that number. So, most I think we have about 20 places in town, he indicated, that have a sewer meter. Most places elsewhere I've been, you have a municipal water system and a municipal sewer system, and you base your charges on how much water comes in because you've got a meter. We don't have that here because of everybody being on wells. So it'd have to be a separately installed sewer meter that would go in the, I believe, the basement of the building. And if you want that number for the next meeting, I can provide it.
That would be helpful,
Yeah,
thanks.
I think so. Thank you.
Okay,
Madam Supervisor.
thank you.
If 1 REU is reasonable, to leave it at that. I don't really know, I just want to make sure that it seems fair, that's all.
Okay. Okay.
I'll vote for without anything on the meters, on the,
I'd like to make a motion to approve the lease with LawNet and authorize the attorney to complete the negotiation of the lease.
I'll support.
So motion by Chalkley and support by Bellinger?
and there's not, and you can't add anything to it that we want to find out about the air?
Oh, he'll bring it back. I mean, we just want him to complete the negotiation. Okay.
Well, I'm not for that. I would like to have this in the end, and I'll probably vote for it if it's halfway decent.
Okay, well, there were a couple questions that we need to get cleaned up, and we'll see a final version, hopefully in 3 weeks.
That's my hope.
Well, 3 weeks is a long time. They really want to get going here. We're not having another meeting until,
The reason why I had mentioned bringing it back is because we had asked the lieutenant of whether, given that they didn't have their comments ready for this evening, whether they wanted to even have it on the agenda or not. And he indicated that, you know, it didn't make a huge difference whether it was on or not. And so
okay.
seems like they're comfortable with taking at least a little bit more time.
A little
to
more
get it figured
time.
out.
Okay, so the motion stands. I make a motion to approve the lease with LawNet and authorize the attorney to complete the negotiation of the lease and bring it
Support.
back. Okay, do we have any more discussion on that? Roll call vote, please.
Chalkley.
Yes.
Manley, yes. Docket.
No,
Bellinger.
Yes,
Chick.
Yes.
Zelenak.
Yes.
Thank you, that passes. Okay, the next item on the agenda is the Resolution 18578. I would like to make a motion to approve Resolution number 18578, the policy and guidelines for property tax poverty reductions.
I'll support.
Motion by Chalkley, support by Chick. Do we have any comments or questions on this item?
yes.
Go ahead,
I
Ms.
was, maybe
Bellinger.
nobody in here knows exactly, but by who does the 115% guideline, who determines this and by what measures? I was kind of curious. Is it has anything to do with cost of living, or I just,
It's
anybody
a,
in?
yeah, it's set by the federal government every year, and you'll see a chart in here where the federal guideline is for poverty, and
How does it become 115% for our particular location? That's,
No,
they said it?
we set 115. I mean, we could set any amount we want. We could say 100% of federal poverty guideline, but since 2013, this township had adopted a level of 115% of the federal guideline for our township guideline to get a poverty reduction in your taxes. So if you look at the chart on page 3 of
So this
3,
is something we could change.
it is something we could change. It seems to be fair to me at 115%. Did you want to increase it or decrease it?
Well, I don't think that we should be encouraging, people looking for federal assistance and so forth.
Well, they're not looking for federal assistance. It's just it's a reduction in their home property taxes. And Mr. Monchek, when the Board of Review looks at it, they take into account, if you looked at the application, they're required to submit their tax forms.
I did see all
and
this, yes.
Right, so it's not like somebody just walking in saying, hey, I just don't quite have enough money this month or whatever, they really carefully evaluate them and see where they're at. And if they're living in a home that's worth much, much more than the average, they're not even allowed to get a reduction. But what he does is he calculates it so that the money comes back from the state. You know how you file for your home property tax credit with the state of Michigan? Well, that money comes back to them and it comes to the township then. People don't usually get their taxes totally eliminated, but they get a reduction. And
So Moncheck kind of helps with the determination of the 115%, because it could be 110%,
no,
105%,
no, that's
120%.
the Board of Review does that.
Board of Review.
The Board of
Okay.
Review does that. And,
Okay,
and the
thanks.
staff to the Board of Review is Mr. Moncheck. He's very, very precise and in particular when it comes especially to these kind of needs coming before the board. And then the board of three Board of Review members evaluate it also. So it's not just one person saying, well, you really are in dire straits, you can't afford to pay your taxes. It's,
So even somebody who might fit by the guidelines may not even be approved?
pardon?
Even somebody who might pass the guidelines in the application may not be approved by the board, possibly?
If they don't meet the qualifications that they need to apply, it's a pretty substantial
Right.
application.
Yeah, I did read through the entire thing. Okay. All right, yeah, thanks. I'm just curious on who came up with the numbers and how.
And they improved the application also to make sure it's more standard. We were getting some applications that were 5-10 years old that somebody just happened to have that was helping somebody do these, and then they didn't have consistent data in order to make their decision. So the application has been improved also. So my motion is to approve these, the policy and guidelines. Do we have any more questions? Ms. Zelnok?
We'll have to change the date on page 3 of 3.
Let's see what it is. Page 3 of
The resolution
3.
date's okay.
Um,
It just says assessment and tax year.
Where are you looking?
Duly resolved and ordained this
Oh.
14th day of February
Okay.
2017.
Okay.
Okay, we will correct that.
Any questions on the application?
Okay. All right, so roll call vote, please.
Manley, yes. Bellinger,
Yes.
Zelenak,
Yes.
Docket,
Yes.
Chick. Yes. Chockley.
Yes. Thank you very much.
It's just 'cause I was sitting next.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is the Bark Park lease. This isn't a real big deal, but Mr. DeKaiser brought it back. It had been sitting on Mr. Fink's desk for quite a while, and they had talked about making some changes. And I had a meeting with Mr. DeKaiser some time ago, and he sent me his thoughts about the lease and how it could potentially be, what they were suggesting to be changed, and wondered if the board wanted to consider any of these changes that he was recommending before we got a cleaned-up version of our lease. So when we had eliminated the funding for the Parks and Rec, one item in the lease was to pick up the dog waste. And apparently, the original lease that Mr. DeKaiser had was that we were supposed to have it picked up on a daily basis. Well, that would be really expensive for not much dog waste. And but the lease that was actually signed said twice a week, and we had eliminated it totally. But right now, we're doing it once a week. So,
Was that before August, or this says August?
The challenge we've had is
Last year.
there are several lease versions, floating around. And the one that was signed calls for picking up the waste twice a week.
Where is that in the lease? What
Oh,
page?
Let me see.
I missed that.
The one that the one that's in your packet It's 6 on page 2 of 5. And this is the red line version that you see that Mr. DeKaiser provided to us, but,
Yeah, but that's 6 months old or 8
Yeah.
months old.
well, he wanted the dates are changed on it because he wanted to have a newer version. So I'm just trying to get the board's feel for, can we go ahead and change this to a weekly basis and clean up the lease and eliminate the early termination clause on page 1? Is the board okay with that?
So there's no lease out there that everybody has signed?
There is a lease that everybody has signed, yes. And it calls for pickup on a twice-weekly basis for the trash, for the dog waste.
How did we vote on it?
It was signed,
No, I mean, we voted just recently to not pick it up.
So we voted not to pay?
we voted not to pay for
Well,
it.
that's what I mean, so if we voted not to pay for it,
Yep, and that,
how can you change something so that, I don't understand. First thing we have to do is vote to pay for it.
and then we have provided the budget to pay for it. We were paying for it for once a week. The lease calls for twice a week. And then Mr. DeKaiser wanted a couple other changes. So my thought was we should have the attorney look at this and and clean it up in accordance with what the board desires, and then we'll get it taken care of again.
Make a motion.
Okay.
I mean, can
Would
we
you like to?
make a motion that our attorney looks at the lease agreement with the public schools for the Bark Park and comes back with, and I guess, do we want to incorporate the shortened length, eliminate the reimbursement language, and add language which reimburses the district if they have to correct any nuisances directly or indirectly caused by the dog park, and change it to once a week for picking up the dog waste?
I think it's a good neighborly kind of a thing that we should do. You know,
have a
they
motion. Is
provide
there
a
a
lot
second?
of to it. So who's making the motion?
I made the motion.
Okay, Ms. Zelnok made
Just
the
for
motion.
all those items.
Okay, and I will second that. So is there any more discussion on it?
Yes, I have a question.
Go ahead, Mr.
Okay, we voted to do it, every 2 weeks? That's what we voted on, or
No.
not too long ago? Well, we took the funding away from it?
We took their funding away, but then we gave it back.
We gave it back, okay.
Right,
How
and
much, did we give enough back to go every week?
right,
5,000.
they pick it up every week.
Well, I think it's pretty elementary. Okay.
Okay.
Is this that complicated of a lease that we need the attorney to spend time and money on it?
Well, there's an indemnification, paragraph in here that I'm just wondering about also, that I'd like the attorney to look at.
It's under the retainer.
It's on the retainer, yeah.
I don't sign anything without them looking at it.
Okay. So,
Janet has a question.
Janet, go ahead, Ms.
Yeah, I just have a
Check.
question. I'm wondering why Mr. Ains wasn't handling this as opposed to the supervisor, since it's basically an administrative function?
I would have been fine with that, except that I had started discussing it with Mr. DeKaiser, and then it got sent to me, and I did copy Mr. Ains on
Okay,
it.
and what is your feelings on that?
Well, and I had also talked to the school superintendent and the attorneys about this, but because she was in the middle of it, I thought it was best to allow the supervisor to complete this discussion. But I'd be happy to take it over if the board so desires.
Well, we'll hope, it'll come back with the attorney, from the attorney and Mr. Ains, so, okay. So, roll call vote?
Chick? Yes. Manley, yes. Chockley?
Yes.
Zelenak?
Yes.
Docket?
No,
Bellinger?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, that passes. The next item is the improvement of the administrative office space. Would you like to talk about this, Mr. Ains?
Yes, we had talked to the board before about objectives to be accomplished this year. There were several related to the efficiency of the office staff and the operations and the service to the public when they come to this building. And so I've been discussing it with the office staff. In addition to that, I was able to find a study where the township had paid for an outside party to come in and develop design and implementation concepts. And this is dated from, I believe, 2006. So in those concepts, it talked about how do you increase the amount of office space that was involved. And that was, I believe, done prior to this room being built. So in the plan, it showed this actually being over in the north part. But having looked at it and discussed it with the staff, I wanted to bring it to the board and see if you had an interest in pursuing it. And I have not identified a source of revenue because I was waiting to see if you agreed to the lease with Nelnet and how you decide to allocate the funds as to whether part of that could be allocated towards doing these modest improvements. But basically there are three things. One is the conference room in the downstairs. If that was not being used as a conference room, it is large enough to be able to service 2 employees and without any structural changes at all. Basically just using the existing equipment that we have, be minor adjustments with computers and phones, that sort of thing. The second improvement was talked about in that study. It was out here in the lobby on the second floor. It identified where the existing pop machine is, that you would have either offices, storage, or a conference room. And there's a conference table there, but if you note, you could finish off that room basically with 2 walls because the other 2 already exist. You already have the lighting, you already have the heating, air conditioning, the sprinkler system, and so forth. So it would be a modest expenditure to basically put a door in, possibly a window if you were going to do something similar to the front desk downstairs, if you had an office where you wanted easy access to the public, and a couple walls. The third area we looked at is in the back of this room. They had identified that the area from about where the clock is there to where there's a projection of a beam coming out from the wall, that there would be a wall constructed there that would consist of simply a wall going to the ceiling and a doorway. And for that, you would end up with the room being available as a conference room. Most jurisdictions, governments I've worked for, they have a conference room off of the boardroom in case you have closed sessions like you did tonight. So if you have to go into it at some point, you're not having to have the audience wait out in the lobby or move from inside here to the lobby. In addition to that, a lot of boards and commissions use the conference room now downstairs, and I think it'd be easier for them to access this space, on an ongoing basis. In looking at that, because of the way the restroom sits here, the walls all go to the roof, so you'd only be putting the one wall in. You're not having to, in order to have confidentiality and soundproofing, you don't have to build any extra walls. You just have the one wall to go in. And the other space there is in the back. There is an area that was identified as a closet, and it has a small area where you could put a doorway and a small wall and create storage space. I believe The sound equipment, the majority of it could be moved this side of the post, although I have not talked to our technician about that. And I think in the closet area there would be sufficient storage for any of his support materials that he might want to store away. These are just concepts, and they're ones that I've looked at with the staff that would cost the least amount of money for generating the best use of the space, in my opinion. And so what I'm asking is, if the board doesn't want us to continue, I don't want to spend extra time proceeding on this. If you do want us to continue, then I would like to get pricing on doing some of these modifications. And then you could decide as a board whether you want to modify the downstairs area, this area, or that area, any of those three, or none of the three. But you could do it on an informed basis based on the pricing. So that's my question, is do you want us to continue to look into it or not?
Okay. Did you want to make a motion, Mr. Dockett? Okay.
I'll make a motion first.
Would like a motion.
I'd like to make a motion that we have our township attorney, township manager, Mr. Steve Ains, look into the improvements of the administration office space, and I would like to include in that the sound system in the boardroom.
Okay.
I support.
Motion by Zelnok and support by Bellinger. Okay, we can have more discussion now. Mr. Dockett.
We need a vote on the motion.
Pardon?
Don't we? Oh, no, sorry.
Yeah, we will. in a
I'm
minute.
sorry, Madam Supervisor.
I would think that you should start tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock and make 2 offices in the boardroom downstairs.
I agree.
There's no, are they gonna use one door, the door that's there?
Yes, everything's
Well,
there.
I mean, then why don't they just do it? I mean, I don't see a big deal for you to, it's your guys' office if that's what you want to do.
Yeah, the only thing is whether you want to have a conference room where you can close it off to have privacy, and right now you do downstairs. Without modifying these upstairs spaces, you don't have that, but that's, again, up
Use
to
the
you.
one in the police department. They don't use it.
Or here.
Well, you'll have to talk to the chief. I don't have statutory control over the chief, and he doesn't give me a key to his facilities, so.
You won't have one up here either.
Okay. All right. Any other? Ms. Manley?
I would like, I think it's part of the motion anyways, to explore redoing the upstairs. Get some quotes on that.
Yeah. Me too. Okay. We're ready for a vote?
Yep.
Okay.
Oh.
Zelnok and Bellinger. Yep. Okay, roll call?
Zelenak,
Yes.
Dockett,
Yes.
Chockley,
Yes.
Bellinger,
Yes.
Manley, yes. Chick?
Wonderful, thank you. That passes. Okay. The next item on the agenda is, I wanted to keep you all informed about what kind of things we were thinking about for the upcoming agendas. So I wrote a memo and kind of made some projections as far as what items might be ready in the upcoming months, or when we project them to be ready. This page 2 has items under consideration for the agenda, and this is all very negotiable, fluid, and I really want your input on what you think is most important. But we also have things that we have to get on the agenda on some meetings, and then some things are just not ready, so they get pushed off a month. Some things come up on a regular basis, like our budget presentation will be happening in May. And then we will need to do some budget amendments, and I've projected March and June for those. So we're just trying to anticipate what kind of things might be coming up on the agenda as the months go by, so we can plan better for them and not have items deferred because we aren't prepared, or we naturally defer items when they're not prepared. So we don't continually have things tabled or not have enough information to make a decision. So this is just kind of things that have been put on my radar screen either by the way I have seen things happening, or people suggesting them to me, committees suggesting them to me, other board members suggesting them, and discussion with Mr. Ains, these kind of items. So, you know, as you think of things that might be on the agenda, let me know, and we'll put them on and discuss what it's going to take to get them ready, and then when might be appropriate for them to be on. Ms. Zelnok, you have a question?
Madam Supervisor, one item based on tonight's discussion I would like to add on is the North Village Steering Committee selection.
Okay.
And I know eventually maybe the lease for 75 Barker and the Kiwanis will come up, but we still have to do some items as far as determine, you know, potential cost to improve it before that comes about.
Right, because the Kiwanis lease is on here, but we don't have that being
Yeah,
negotiated yet.
no, so
or
I think,
anything, so
eventually I could see it coming, but not certainly in February.
yeah, I'm not certain it's February either.
Okay,
So,
but thank you.
okay, Mr. Dockett?
We've already voted on the employee handbook. I'd like to see that move right up this list.
I'm not quite sure that's ready, but
Well, we voted on it a year ago.
okay. Well, we'll bring it as soon as it's ready.
Well, how do we light a fire under it? It's been a year and
Okay.
it's still not even ready.
Okay.
That's the baloney.
Ms. Chick?
For February, it says fee schedule. What fee schedule are we referring to?
This is the fee schedule for the planner, and I don't know that this is going to be ready, but I've pulled down fee schedules from several different communities just in getting a comparison, because there's been comments about our fees being high, and it'd be good to know really how do we compare, and are our fees adequate or are they too high, and we should be evaluating those. So some of that will happen behind the scenes, and then there may come a recommendation to this board to actually look at them. Normally the fee schedule is set in the budget process, but we didn't do that this year. So it's totally appropriate to look at them. It also came up that we may be missing a fee schedule for, like, if someone comes back to the Planning Commission and they want a site plan extension. We don't actually have a fee established for site plan extensions. So this will be a conversation with the Planning Commission, Mr. Ains, you know.
So so then the fee schedule and the comparison of planner fees is basically the same discussion? Or are you talking about planning company or
The
comparing our
comparison of planner
against
fee.
another planner?
Well, one of the board members wanted to know how our planner fees compared to other planner fees. So
They're the highest in the state of Michigan.
I don't know that that's true, but
Our
we would
planner-
like to.
Our
we
planner
would-
sure is.
We would like to be able to know.
Are these
It's a question.
Are these the fees that we're talking about with regarding to the increasing of the building fund? Is that the
No.
fees? Okay, so I think that was maybe the question. You're talking about the fees for
What fees
planning
are you talking
companies or fees that we charge people to
Right.
do amendments to their property? Which is it?
These are fees for people to come before the site, before the Planning Commission for site plans, and before the ZBA, and you know, those kind of fees. And then the fees that our planner would charge on, you know, potentially for each type of project that they're evaluating. There's fees associated with our engineer, and there's fees associated with our planner and our zoning administrator. So just to look at those and see how they compare to other communities.
So, can I, sorry.
Go ahead,
I
Ms.
didn't
Chair.
finish, okay.
Please.
A couple of things. So the indication is that these are all items that either the board members or any of the board members have brought as items of interest? That's what all of these are?
Or things that I've thought of, yes.
Okay,
Or
so-
other people have brought to me that
Okay.
I thought were of value.
All right, I would like to see Mr. Ains actually putting things on our agenda items of things that he would like to see the board discuss
Yes.
that would help the township. And are any of those any of his?
I second that.
And that's fine. Mr. Ains, I believe we've discussed a lot of these, so I don't know specifically which are yours and which are mine anymore, but
Yeah, they're township issues. And so basically it's a matter of how does the agenda get developed each week, if that's what you're referring to, versus long-range planning.
No, actually, it has more to do with what ideas are you bringing to the board that we haven't explored ourselves that we should probably talk about to improve our township.
We'd like to welcome you to add things to our agenda.
We want I would like to see
Okay.
more memos from you.
Okay, well, I can put more on, but we were told by some members of the public we were having too long agendas, so we're trying to be careful that way, too.
That's
It's-
true.
it's-
I understand that.
But it's our meetings, and we meet, sometimes they need to be long, and that's okay.
Okay.
But,
Well,
okay.
I'll be happy to bring enough back that we can go to 11 or 12 every week.
No, we don't want to do that. So we have to be a little more concise, yeah.
No.
I think a lot of the reason our meetings run long is less to do with the number of items, because we've had really long agendas before, previous to this, and we got through them before 10 o'clock. It has a lot to do with the conversation going on at the meetings, so we need to do a little better. I would like to see Mr. Ains contributing more to the agenda.
Yeah, well, I am contributing to the agenda, but if you'd like me to look at other issues that haven't been brought to the board's attention yet, I can do that as well.
okay. We have priorities, and so Mr.
That's my other question,
Yeah.
is that we have a list of goals. What, are any of our goals on here that we are?
We have to review and update the board priorities in April.
I see
That's
one.
my projection
Yeah, I
of that.
thought-
And then I'd like to do a report, have a report added, which is an update on the progress of our board priorities. You know,
I see a couple on here, like soliciting bids for improvements to the office space, that's one. I see the railroad easement, I think that might have been in there.
yeah.
But we had a number one goal, right?
I think that was improve the efficiency of the downstairs and the way the downstairs interacts with the
No, that
public.
wasn't, yeah.
Website communication, I believe.
Yeah, and I'd like to see that tackled first before we
I
do.
agree.
Yeah.
Right, but that's an administrative should be going on, but then we can get an update on the progress of that. So, go ahead, Mr. Ains.
Well, there's different versions of communications. One that I've implemented since I was here was that I have staff meetings the Thursday after each board meeting, so that I go through it with the staff, what has occurred at the meetings, and what directions I give them to do certain tasks, and then we bring up other items for discussion with them. So the inter-staff communication, I feel, has improved. And then you have the interaction with the public, and that's where we've talked about both the website and about the people who come to the desk, or people who call us. And part of that has been addressed by having the zoning administrator here on a once-a-week basis. The code enforcement officers here twice a week. And from my office desk, I can see anybody who comes to the front desk. And I've told people the door stays open unless absolutely necessary to my office. And quite often people will ask to see me because they can see I'm available. Or I'm there to back up the staff if there's questions that aren't resolved or other issues. So we're trying to improve communications on a number of different fronts.
I think we're doing a good job within this area right here, but a lot of the comments I hear from the public, they don't know what's going on. They don't know they're either talking about really old issues that have either been resolved or just aren't issues anymore, or they're not hearing anything from the board or the township to the public directly. It always seems like we're always trying to clear up informations constantly from comments from the public. So I think we have to do a better job outside the building. And I'd like to be able to tick it off when we accomplish our goals. I'd like to be able to, yep, we got that one done.
Okay.
And we're always open to suggestions as new ways to communicate to the public. So if there's things that we're not doing, if you or the public would make those comments, I'd welcome them. Thank you.
Yeah, we can all get the word out. I do have one question. Can you please verify the days again? Is it still Wednesdays that our zoning administrator's in?
Yes.
In what days would so it's Wednesday mornings?
Most of the times it's Wednesday morning.
Okay.
That way we can schedule appointments in advance for her when people, can do that. That way we utilize her time best and the public doesn't have to wait. But we do take walk-in.
How about the code enforcement lady? When is she in?
Generally, she's on Monday and Wednesdays. We started her out as Monday full-time, 8 hours, and
Okay.
then Wednesday was 4, and now we've gone to 8.
Okay.
So we're back to the 16 that were budgeted in the original budget.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Go ahead, Ms. Selnick.
And one thing with any agenda item, if we can just make sure it's kind of vetted and complete so that it hopefully just comes back once, or the goal should be that it comes once, it's decided, and so that's what I would ask, that there be discipline in the process to make sure it's complete before it comes before the board.
So it's really helpful for us to get these, that's why it's so important to get the items from you early. And if there's something you specifically want to get on yourself, we need a complete package, so, and it's helpful to get that like the Friday before even the next, so it'd be like this Friday. If we knew you wanted something on the agenda, at least we could talk about what kind of materials we'd need to accompany it, and instead of the last minute, and then it gets bumped. So I'm going to ask that, and we'll try to let you know what items we're anticipating being on the agenda earlier, so that it's not the last day. And so you may see a list of 5 or 6 things, and thinking they're going to be on the agenda, but 2 of them will get pulled before the last day. So we'll try to be more communicative about what we're anticipating to be on the agenda, so that you all know ahead of time. And Mr. Ains and I have been working really well getting these agendas together. And Ms. Carlisle, thankfully, we have Ms. Carlisle. She pulls together a lot of stuff last minute. So anyway, any other comments on this? All right. We have a second call to the public. Do we have anyone who would like to speak to us at this time? Please state your name, your address, and you have 3 minutes-ish to speak.
Hi, David Gordon, 5558 Helmer Road. Hello, everyone, again.
Hello.
Just a couple of things very quickly. I was very happy to see this memo that the Township Supervisor put together regarding agendas and meetings and how to make them shorter. And kudos to you for having a much shorter agenda tonight. Good job. I'm a little confused when I hear some members of the board asking Mr. Ains to be acting as a leader of the community. He's hired as a manager. He's the manager. He wasn't elected. You guys are the leaders. You make the agenda. He facilitates the agenda. I believe that's how it works. The problem that I think that you still have with your agendas is that you've got a list, a very long list with 28 items of things that you want to get to in the next few months. But that's not the process. You don't seem like you have a process for how something winds up moving from this long list into an agenda. You have some tasks that things you want to check off, like do we have all the paperwork, that sort of thing. That's part of a process, but it would be nice to get an entire process, and I think that's where Mr. Ains, with his administrative expertise, should be able to step up and help somehow or another. Or maybe you need to reach outside of the community at this point and find somebody who's good at administrative processes and how they work for time management. For instance, the very last item here on the agenda, behind the memo, was this list of 28 items that the supervisor put on there. I'm kind of confused as to what the intent was. Did you really want to go through the 28 items or try to add more items or discuss dozens of them? And so you spent a lot of time on that, but I don't know that you accomplished anything. It's the kind of thing that maybe could be done prior to the meetings when you all talk with one another and figure out what should move up the list and what are the priorities. I mean, you've had your meetings and you've got your Excel file with all those items on them and what's a priority and what isn't. I think a process would really help the community because we would be able to have faster, more efficient meetings that were more focused. And lastly, the thing that's in this memo that I found the most interesting was, again, Madam Supervisor, in your very polite manner, have again asked that, quote, please ask your questions of the responsible party ahead of the meeting. I kept track tonight. There were at least 5 different occasions when Trustee Dockett and Trustee Bellinger asked questions that simply could have been asked before the meeting. Each one of them was 3 to 5 minutes of discussion on it. I don't believe that's respectful to the members that are sitting out in the public watching this on television, the people that show up, the rest of the board members. Please try to get your answers to those sorts of things on every agenda item it appears before the meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak to us? Okay. Seeing no one, we have the opportunity for board member comments. We should start down here with Ms. Chick. Do you have any tonight?
I just wanted to, yes, happy birthday, Mr. Wagner. I know he's not here, Chief Wagner, rather. But also, my comment about Mr. Ains participating a little bit more is many of the things that came before us are administrative functions and probably could have been handled administratively and from him. I'm not asking him to be the leader of the board because we are. But, that's all.
No comments, short meeting, so everybody have a good evening.
Yes, nice. Yeah, and the intent of the list was to just be transparent and let the rest of the board know what was on my mind. So that's my point of it. Ms. Chick has
I have one
another
more
point.
thing.
Go ahead.
One of the residents actually gave me, I don't know if the township wants to do this, but in the interest of being more communicative with the township, they actually suggested that if it would be possible, and it might be a little bit costly, but we're talking about paper, if we could put the minutes, a packet of minutes in the township hall so people could come and pick it up, or take a packet of minutes over to the library so they could pick up our board minute meeting so that they could see that way, because a lot of people don't have cable, they can't come to the meetings, but they do go to different businesses around here, and if we could do that, like we do the Currents in every store you go to, we could probably do something similar to help them be more informed.
That's an idea, yeah. We could do that. Okay, yeah, so while there isn't a process set aside for these items, it's in the interest of being transparent with my other board members, and I'm working on them specifically myself, and I welcome anybody else who wants to work on any of these. So, anyway, thank you all for keeping the meeting down tonight, and we'll move on. Ms. Zelnock, do you have anything?
Nope, I agree with Ms. Chick. Happy birthday, Chief Wagner. Hope you had a great day. It had to be a good day. You weren't here with us.
Okay. Mr. Dockett.
Yes. I'd like to tell Mr. Gordon that I get paid to be here. I don't mind being here to do the business of the township. He doesn't have to be here, but and he doesn't get paid for being here. So, and I would like to thank Jennifer in the office. She did me a very good deed today yesterday when I came and talked to her, and she got all this information together for me. She did a very nice job. Thank you very much. And I think you should buy and use local businesses if you can. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ms. Bellinger.
Yeah, as a public functionary, elected public functionary, not a leader, I am very pleased and fortunate and blessed to be here at these meetings and to take part. questions are vital. And not only are they vital for us on the board, but they're vital for the public to hear the kinds of questions and concerns, and it answers other people's questions, people that perhaps are not here. I welcome our manager's input on various things, and I do appreciate his and encourage his involvement in not only our agenda and in subjects that perhaps we haven't considered, and throughout working in the township and our various business. And as Mr. Dockett mentioned, the staff in the office has been outstanding lately, really. And yes, please, shop local. Thank you and have a wonderful evening.
Thank you. I move to adjourn.
Support.
Motion by Chalkley, support by Bellinger. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Thank you. All right.